Yeah? Good. Okay, let's go to our first keynote speaker of this morning. Now, many of you know Dr. Paul Timmers, International Advisor for Digital Policy and Economy, and many of you will know him as the former Director of Digital Society, Trust and Cybersecurity at the European Commission. It's a great pleasure to have Paul with us here today. As you know, he's both a scholar and an entrepreneur, a civic leader in his own right. He's going to pick up the theme of shaping the future of the EU in the digital age. Paul, welcome to Tallinn. The floor is yours.
And I must say, Greg, if you are a digital dinosaur, you are very dynamic and engaging, so that's a good way. Thank you very much for inviting me to be here today on stage and present to you something about the future, the digital future of Europe. And let me start, first of all, by thanking and congratulating the Estonian presidency of the EU, because they have been really a digital presidency and have been really putting this on the agenda. And I can indeed recommend to follow what they say. I myself am an e-resident, and I'm going to set up a company here in Estonia using the e-residency scheme. I also would like to congratulate Finland today with its 100 years of independence. Very important that we all have our identity. And certainly thanking ESPON for inviting me, giving the opportunity to talk to you. I will quickly take you through a number of elements about the state of digital in the European Union. First of all, digital is everywhere. It's from your pocket to the plane, it's from the couch to the supermarket. I don't need to say that. And digital is big, big business. It's also big policy. It's Merkel, Macron, and others talking about it at major forums. It is the kind of thing where we actually have to recognize it's not Europe that is leading really in this. It's rather the US, it's China, it's what they call GAFA, the Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apples of this world. And we are increasingly seeing digital in all policies. And that's actually, I think, really a theme for the future, having digital in all policies and how you do that. So let's talk about some of the big trends. And I'm referring here to people that are major thinkers or analysts in the world of digital and in the world of technology. One of those is Mary Meeker. Worthwhile to read it up. She's got a 300-slide pack about the next 2 years. So this is just about the next 2 years. And one of the trends that she sees is how much more time people are spending online. Up to 6 hours a day spending online. And look at that right side. You see that half of that time is actually spent on the mobile. So the mobile is a real important thing, which you, of course, know, but you also need to make use of it. That's obviously the message from her side. And just one other element that she has is about the explosive growth of data. That's in all sectors of the economy, but here an important example about healthcare. So healthcare data is growing at 50% a year. 50% a year. It's massive amounts of data. Many more doctors are using electronic health records. Your health data can be collected from actually that same mobile phone or fitness device as I have here, and that's a very rich asset. Something else that has already been mentioned here. Broadband everywhere, but not really everywhere. Not so much yet in the rural areas, and that's a real risk. That's where we have policy for. Let me call it something else. Over the past year, there has been a wide debate in Europe, running until the summer roughly, organized by Atomium, a think tank, next generation internet debate. And in that one, they involved large newspapers like Le Monde, Frankfurter Allgemeine, Guardian, and they also had an online exercise with about 500,000 comments, which they actually analyzed with sentiment software. And they asked people, what do you think are the big technologies that will make profound change in the years to come in the way we learn, we work, we do commerce, etc., we govern? And number one, big data and AI, artificial intelligence, digital manufacturing and online platforms, IoT, Internet of Things, so just remember the abbreviation, IoT, open source, blockchain, and you will not be surprised if you have just followed what happens around blockchain in the skyrocketing pricing in the stock markets, and a number of other technologies. So this is what people expect as the big technologies. And indeed, these kind of technologies are also coming back when you ask, for example, the World Economic Forum, when they talk about what's going to change in cities. Yes, they do talk about Internet of Things and about mobile technologies. They talk about big data. They talk also about this EID, like the e-resident that I have in my pocket. They talk about data analytics. And the areas that they see changing in cities are around all of these city functions like power, electricity, transport, public services, health, and what have you, in the areas of outsourcing these services, in integrated city services, end-to-end transport, which is a real struggle in many cities. I invite you to come to Brussels and try to do smooth end-to-end transport, and probably London, you might say the same about that. Sharing and circular economy, a thing that's very much in the picture, and interesting that they allocate that to cities, and city advisory services. So they are seeing the same technologies interacting in a transformative way in cities. So what are then the big expectations? Well, let me first mention one big expectation. If you just look a little bit further, 25 years ahead, in 2043, Ray Kurzweil, who's one of the thinkers about how technology is impacting all of us very much and is saying this is an exponential development, he's saying in 2043, so just 25 years from now, and I think all of us will still be there then, you can buy for the price of a computer today the capacity of 1 million human brains. And you may not take it seriously, but many of his predictions actually have come true. So one of the big expectations is that it actually will go ever faster. And indeed, the rate of major change is doubling every 20 years. So in the last 20 years, we had 3 big changes. That is social media, if you look back, the mobile phone, and the internet. So in the next 20, 25 years, until Ray Kurzweil prediction can be tested, we will have 6 big changes. And what does that actually mean? Because these changes are really big, you know, it really makes a difference. Social media, you are just using here, Slido, the mobile phone, the internet, just to mention, obviously. Big changes that have happened to us. There will be 6 of those in the next 25 years. Let's just think about it. What would that mean for the digital transformation and territorial thinking? It certainly means that you cannot sit on your hands, as they say in Belgium. You have to act. Now, let's just take a few of those big expectations. What might happen? Well, one of that is we might all become much smarter and more productive with artificial intelligence, because we'll have that as a tool in our hands. We will get much more abundance. We will become richer, as a matter of fact, with this richness of data and Internet of Things. All the devices, Internet of Things is all these devices that can be connected everywhere, that are collecting data from your mobile phone to a sensor about temperature or electricity consumption or air quality. And we will live longer and healthier. Let's look at that. Well, indeed, smarter with artificial intelligence. If you follow the press, you know that Facebook is now using artificial intelligence software to predict when people are inclined to commit suicide. So actually, artificial intelligence is very accurate in predicting this kind of potential behavior. Artificial intelligence doesn't need to be huge and big. If you have just 205 neurons, these kind of things are working with artificial neurons, this artificial intelligence, you can very accurately predict and recognize a face. And face recognition is going to be everywhere if it isn't already happening right now. Smart cars is very much in the picture, self-driving cars. And actually people are saying the combination between robotics, so that's smart kind of mechanics, you might say, and electric cars is made in heaven. But you can also use artificial intelligence for the social good. IBM has launched a challenge to use artificial intelligence, deep science, and cloud computing, you know, that's where you store all this data and where you can do the computing, to use it for societal challenges like climate, like migration, like health, like food. So we will become smarter with artificial intelligence. We can also benefit a lot from this abundance of Internet of Things, of these devices that are everywhere that can collect data and data itself. I, for example, have become a user of a smart meter, a little plug smart meter at home, and I discovered that I was using a tremendous amount of electricity due to one device that actually I could replace. It was a fridge. And you can, this kind of stuff, it's already actually a bit old-fashioned. You can just buy it today and use it. That's an Internet of Things, and you can use it to your own benefit. You can monitor what is happening in your bed. Well, not everything that is happening in your bed, but whether your bed is very healthy, the bed bugs, they can be tracked with an Internet of Things, and the data can be analyzed. And the big thing about Internet of Things and data is expected to be happening in industry. It's called Industry 4.0. It's the transformation. So you make all of the manufacturing intelligent, and you can really start doing tuned manufacturing. And it's a big transformation that's happening right now. A lot of money in that. As a matter of fact, you can see that manufacturing, this is not so easily readable, but that manufacturing is one of the biggest revenue generators already in Internet of Things. But all of these areas are growing at 10, 12, 15, 20% a year, from manufacturing to healthcare when you talk about Internet of Things. And a lot of good coming out of that. One of the good things that might be coming out of that is that we are going to live longer and healthier. So I, for example, on my mobile phone, I have this app called Babylon, with whom I can talk to a doctor. Actually, it's an artificial doctor. I can tell what are my symptoms, it's giving advice, and the moment that it cannot go further, it will connect me to a real doctor or to a device that can monitor my vital signs. And so that's artificial intelligence used to make me healthier. We have very advanced stuff like, picking up your brain signals. This is a very charming story about a young guy in Italy who was paralyzed from his neck downwards, couldn't participate anymore, got this kind of brain signal device that picked up what he thought, and with his thinking, he can actually steer his wheelchair. So his mother said, I'm so happy he's independent again. He can participate again, thanks really to this way of controlling his own mobility. And controlling mobility, we will have many, many elderly people. In some way or another, we need to address this. They cannot all be in a care home. People will have to continue living independently at home, and that includes mobility like smart walkers. And some people are even saying death is obsolete. Well, perhaps it's true, we'll see. So, living longer and healthier, becoming richer thanks to data and Internet of Things, becoming all smarter and more productive with artificial intelligence, that's our future ahead. Well, I don't think that story is quite the story that's going to happen. It's a happy story, but it's not going to become true. Why not? Because there are many downsides to it. There's the dark side. So if you ask in this big survey that was done over the past year, people in Europe, what do you think are the downsides or the dark sides of all these technological developments? Number one, they mentioned security. So cybersecurity, hacking, those kind of things. We don't feel secure and safe anymore in this digital world, is what they are saying. Or staying in control. Is it the machine that is taking over rather than us taking still the decisions? Is it that self-driving car that does everything and we are out of control? Or are we not empowered anymore? Are we becoming the slaves of the machine? We will have to follow the machine rather than the machine following us. And what about employment and inequality? Who will still benefit from that, and where are the jobs going to go? And other concerns around the proper legal framework and actually what they call the stupidity of AI. I recommend that you look up this study because there's a lot of rich information about the expectations and the concerns. So the dark side of one of those could actually be around jobs. So will digitization and going on the internet deliver meaningful work for everybody and generate salaries that are at least equal or better than the current levels of salaries? And again, asking that same large group of people, there were thousands of responses, over 50% says, no, it will not contribute. And others are more positive, but 50% at least is concerned about this digital future in terms of the quality and the level of work. And indeed, McKinsey says, under most scenarios, so they talk about work and jobs, the transitions will be very challenging. It will match or even exceed the scale of the shifts out of agriculture and manufacturing that we have seen in the past. Think about that. This was an agricultural society 100 years ago. There's now 5% agriculture. In most areas in Europe, I think it's around that, 5%, 3%. That's an enormous shift. Imagine that this happens to jobs. And indeed, there are millions and millions of jobs that are predicted to be affected. And then something else about AI and Internet of Things and data and longevity. Are there going to be haves and have-nots, those that are in and out? What people are thinking, again, when you ask them across Europe, they are saying the ones that will benefit most from that are young citizens and the big tech companies and the startup companies, and the ones that will be benefiting least are the older citizens. It's the public sector. It's public organizations. So there's a concern there, for sure. And what will that actually do to our retirement plans? So yes, there are upsides and downsides, and we will have to balance that. And that's what policy, and that's what this seminar is also about. That's the thinking, that's the shaping that you will do. And so there are some very difficult questions in this digital policy that we will have to tackle in policy development. For example, who owns the data? The data that is going from my device, I've got a Fitbit here, is it owned by me or Fitbit? It's personal data, but what is Fitbit doing with it? What is it when they get more value out of it because they analyze my Fitbit with all your Fitbits and then create a new service? Is that my value or is that their value? Can they give my information to someone else? What about the free flow of data across borders, but also in the industry? Can everybody use data for the greater good? What about digital sovereignty? Are we going to become completely dependent upon others in the world and don't we have our autonomy anymore? And what about the 100 years of independence of Finland? What about democratizing and humanizing AI? Making AI, artificial intelligence, accountable so that we actually understand what the algorithms do. And we can say, yes, I agree with that decision, or I do not agree with that decision. And what about the good and the bad and the ugly of the sharing economy? Not everything is rosy in the sharing economy, and there are great concerns about what some of, for example, the rental schemes are doing to the quality of cities. So there are difficult policy questions. Let me then finish. I think in these policy questions, there are a number of policies that you may want to look at specifically. They are in evolution, but you can make use of them when you look at this whole spectrum of the expectation of technology. Plugging the broadband gap, that's obvious. We need to have broadband and capable broadband everywhere, and there's European policy under discussion right now for that, the Electronic Communications Code. And then data, I would focus especially on that. If as a city, as a region, as a territory, you're not yet digitizing your data, you are missing a tremendous asset and someone else will do it for you. So digitize the data that you have in the cities, that you have in the region, whether it's about tourism, mobility, health, the people living there, whatever you can do. Make sure it's digital and that it is under control of the citizens. And that's where we have policy, the free flow of data policy and the general data protection regulation about data protection. E-services, digital service roads, and actually the electronic identity card is part of that, so that you can deliver services across regions, inside and across regions. Services for transport, mobility, for energy, for health, for taxation, what have you. Certainly pay a lot of attention to cybersecurity. All of your efforts may be in vain when your information is stolen or when you get hacked. Put digital to work in the urban and regional agendas that are there in Europe for you to use and for you to further develop. And we'll hear more about that. And go digital in all sectors. There are no sectors excluded. All sectors are going digital. All sectors will have to amend their policy. And this is about e-government, this is about transport, it's about energy, it's about health, it's about the environment, all of these sectors. And that's where you can do a lot of good and a lot of bad with digital. And then shape your own future, participating in the research programs, in the territorial development programs, setting up and developing the territorial governments. So a whole richness of policies. My wish would be that this is happening by you in a human-centered way in digital transformation in the territorial thinking. Thank you very much.